This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchioni, and hi.
And we are going to continue our step-by-step investigation of practical prayer today, which we began in the last episode.
Yeah, that was fun. I got a lot of good positive feedback about it, too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love when that happens. Yeah, so, and what we did last week is you picked a prayer out of the Practical Prayer for Real Results book, and we stepped through it a piece at a time so that you could dig into the details in each of the steps.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. And it was a long episode, but we did manage to make it all the way through the prayer.
So I will just depend on you in terms of the length of it. I can tell you why.
Okay.
You got that, didn't you? But yeah, I can tell you why I picked last week. I think I picked last week because it was very new. The concept of it was very new and very light. But the ones that I picked this week, in the section that I picked this week, these were the ones that got me. So I thought,
okay,
there might be some listeners out there that are like me, maybe, who knows, and they might appreciate these. So, you ready?
And it's actually two different prayers, but they got the same topic, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I remember in the class when I was there, I'm a little bit hoarse, excuse me. I remember in the class when I first read it, I was just really knocked off my feet about the first one because the world that I come from. I've always been in leadership in some capacity. And I remember being taught by my dad when I was teeny weeny how to pray, at night, and then Sunday school and subsequent from there. So there was a fixed formula, in a sense, in my mind about how to pray. And when I got to your class, I actually wasn't thinking about anything, because this is what I've been doing. I know how this is going to go. And see, I'm confessing, but there are others who may do that too. And when it started, we got to this one, I thought, and I remember the first thing I thought, oh my God, if I had these prayers before I went into those meetings, they might have turned out a whole lot differently and even sooner, assuming that they came out the way I wanted anyway. But so it was that kind of thing that struck me. So this week I chose that group, Perfect Group Meetings.
Okay. And it's on page 52 and 53. And I'll read both of them and you can see what the difference is. So this is a prayer for perfect group meeting, and the variant of it is a God prayer or invocation. So this it uses God language. There's one mind, one infinite love intelligence, which I call God. This one shares itself through and as everything that it creates. Each person, every idea, and all activities are part of this one. There is nothing outside of this one, so I know that God is right here, right now. I am this infinite love intelligence taking form, and so is each person here. Every idea is born in the mind of the one. Every word is God's infinite intelligence. Every interaction brings about a deeper understanding of this limitless wisdom. This meeting is an infinite idea taking particular form. This is the divine mind of God sharing itself through many channels, allowing good and more good to come into the lives of each one present and each one we touch. The insights are profound, the guidance is clear, the gifts that each one brings are joyously recognized and deeply appreciated. This time together unfolds in perfection. We easily move past any idea of separation or that we're limited or constrained by something that's happened before. Any individual requirements or specific agendas are easily incorporated. We're working together and bring out the best ideas for what's possible. I'm grateful for this good and for the wonderful way that this meeting progresses. I give thanks for the unique combination of love and wisdom that each one brings to this group. In feeling this gratitude, I know this time together is blessed. This meeting is a sacred activity and a tremendous success. And so it is.
Okay. You're going to do the second one also?
Yep.
How do you want to do
And
that?
I'm going to point out that this is a wonderful invocation that you can do when you're getting together with a church group or with a bunch of ministers or people who are comfortable talking about God. But the other one, which is actually it's the same prayer with different language, is very much intended because, getting back to the basics of this teaching, there's only God. That's all there is. Everything is that one divine good expressing itself in all these billions and billions of different ways. So we can know that that's true and not necessarily mention it. Because some people have an allergy to the word God. And some people have a resistance to the thought that what they're doing is spiritual. So the fact that we know that there is one divine power and presence that's always acting and it's showing up in all these different situations, lets us do what I have labeled a stealth prayer. So this next prayer is also for a perfect group meeting. It is a stealth prayer for an exercise in excellence. And you can imagine yourself standing in front of a bunch of atheists or people from all sorts of different religions who might be used to praying to their own prophet or their own deity or their own process. And they can hear this at the beginning of a meeting and not think that it's religious. So here it goes. We are together here for something wonderful. This is an exercise in excellence. Each of us has the skills and strengths and knowledge. As we meet together today, we each bringing all these gifts to this project that we have in common. All of our diverse ideas and individual perspectives are already blending together. They continue to combine in ways that bring about great new ideas that go beyond what any of us can do on our own. Each voice is heard, every good idea is welcome. We let the inspiration flow, and our success is greater than any of us have yet imagined. We easily move past any idea that we're limited or constrained by what's happened before. Any individual requirements or specific agendas are easily incorporated. We're all working together and bring out the best ideas for what's possible in this project. I thank each one involved for his and her participation. I'm grateful for the willingness to step up with enthusiasm to create something great. As this exercise in excellence begins, I already know it's a tremendous success. And so it is. And that is the same prayer in two very different flavors.
It's just amazing. It's a God thing. That's what I remember thinking that day when we look at these prayers. I'll tell you this, I have to, I got to stay focused because I can zone out, into my God zone, I call it. And there are some trigger words in here that do that. And that's what happened the first time we looked at this in the class. In the very beginning, you said there's one mind, one infinite love, intelligence, which I call God. And in the pre-work, I'm not sure if you call it pre-work, the preparation. For me, the preparation is before you can pray to God, you have to have some understanding of what you believe about God. You have to have some kind of some thing so you know what to expect. Otherwise, you're just going into it blindly. And
right, what is going to be answering this prayer?
Yes. And this just said it all. One infinite love, intelligence, which I call God. That totally set the stage for me. And let me say this, because I was thinking about the many, many, many church meetings I had been into. Everybody comes with an agenda, and that's not a slap or, not poo-pooing on anybody. Whenever you come to a meeting, you have an agenda. And hopefully it's the same, but often there are some varying intentions and agendas and bullet points in what people bring to the table. But this kind of like sets us off at the same point. And that's anything that comes after this, I thought, oh my God, this is powerful, because you are starting with God, like in the beginning, God, and it can only go up from there. Now, that's where I was.
Okay.
Okay.
So the concise recognition step in the first one, in the God prayer, which is, I mean, it packs the whole thing into a sentence. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's one power, love, intelligence, which I call God. That's basically naming God.
And
describing God.
Like you did such a good thing here. I have no idea where your head was when you were writing these. You can certainly read this and get to know you as a person reading through these prayers, obviously. But when I read this, I thought, this gets us all at the same point of alignment with where we're going from this point on. It's God. And so if you decide to veer off, you're not going to, because I've reminded you in this prayer, I'm telling about some of my experiences, but they're not unique. They're that way in all walks of church leadership, religious leadership in those ways. So I'm just stuck on how it was for me when I first, it was like faith. Okay, wish I had this then, because it would have set a lot of things in order. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I can just go on with how great I think
I've attended meetings where we'll start with an invocation like that. And there's something on the meeting agenda, and everybody thinks that we're going to agree to do it, going into the discussion and the proposal. And then something comes up, and there's a question, and there's a rethinking, and then there's maybe we don't want to be doing this. And it's not a conflict, because in the end, everybody agrees, yeah, we're not ready for this. This is not right for us now. So what seemed like a slam dunk yes is now a slam dunk no. And nobody's put out. Nobody's, disadvantaged by it. And it's the most amazing thing to watch. There's very little in the way of conflict.
It is. And it's not magic necessarily, although I use that word a lot, and I will continue. But
you may.
But it's a kind of it's like it becomes, when you mix love in it and how deeply odd this is, it feels like magic. Because when we all get on the same page, even if it's just a little tiny square, in the Monopoly board, it's a go. If we're all standing on go and not trying to catch up down the road somewhere, it's easy to have a point of focus, even if it's subconscious, that we started out with God. We started out in agreement about who's, what power is kind of directing this thing here. And I lean heavily on the subconscious always, because I just do. So I just thought in this prayer, you really set it up. There is nothing outside of this one. So know that God is right here, right now. Now you come with a stink attitude, and you've heard that. I say that with much affection. But our listeners know.
And your background and familiarity and comfort with doing the God prayer and using the God language and the religious language lets that one resonate with you, because it zeroes in on that divine power and presence really quickly. And the other one, for people who are not going to be receptive to that language, does the same thing. We're here for an exercise in excellence, and each of us is bringing a valuable gift. It opens up and is saying the same thing. This is God showing up as each of us, without mentioning that it's God or the creative process or any of it, just acknowledging the way it looks.
So let me flip to that. Okay, here I am. Let me speak to that again. You said that it's God without mentioning it, without mentioning God. There's something else in here that catches us, and we may not understand what it is. We are together here now for something wonderful. This is an exercise in excellence. We can meet there. And you left out the God piece, and I know that there's God all in there. But even if you don't reject God and what term did you use? I thought it was just really great earlier. You didn't say indigestion.
Stealth?
No, it was like
allergy.
Yes.
Allergy,
I like that.
People have an allergy
so even
to the
if
word
you
God.
have an allergy to God, even if you don't, there's something right here that says, if this is something that I want to be committed to, I'm committed to something wonderful because I want it to work. I'm committed to excellence. I'm going to bring my best to this project, period. Even if you know nothing about God or you don't have an allergy, I want the best to happen here. And that caught me. That really... Each of us has
the advantage
skills.
here is, we're all bringing something wonderful here, and this has the advantage is that what we're doing is it's still saying the truth. Everything that we say in a practical prayer needs to be something that we believe to be true, and this says the truth. It just uses different words so that people aren't gonna say, run away, keep me away from this. Now I want to bring out something that you had mentioned many episodes back. Is that sometimes you don't know when I'm starting a prayer. Because in the traditions that you came from, the prayer always begins before it begins with somebody saying, let us pray. So, and in the first one, there's no prompt that says, let us pray. It just goes in and starts talking about that God, the one power and presence. And in the second one, it doesn't even mention that it's God that we're talking about. It just kind of slips into the prayer and can sound like somebody, welcoming people to the conference room. So I have had people report back that they've done this before a meeting, and they just say, oh, wow, that was the best meeting we ever had. I was ready for a fight, and it just never broke out.
I love how when you talked about these prayers, you said, I did this, and then it's stealth. You just boiled out the God talk out of it. But that doesn't boil out or sift out the God in it, the God power.
No, not at all.
In it. And that's what's so amazingly sweet to me, because there's, in 1 Corinthians 12, it talks about our spiritual gifts. And I remember when I first heard that chapter being read, it jumped out to me differently than the group that I was working with. Because it just did. And it talks about all the spiritual gifts. And I looked at that and couldn't see how a whole project was able to be successful without all the gifts. And it's that way all the time. So when you talk about something wonderful, exercise in excellence, and what you do in these first step 1 and 2, that's saying the same thing. We all bring value that is necessary for the excellence of this project. And I was, I didn't learn the steps right away. I struggled with them, obviously, and I, always share that with you. But I was hooked with these two right here. I said, okay, I get it. So if I can use this is what's important to me. The rest will fall, will unfold for me as I go along, and it did.
I have spent a fair amount of time in corporate America, including right up until 2019, working in technology. And I would often do a prayer myself before a sales call or a business meeting or some other activity. And when the situation allowed for it, I would do a stealth prayer, and it would sound like I was setting the stage for here's what we're going to talk about today. But it was a little flowery, and it was a little, it was my personality rubbing off on it was what people thought. But it was remarkably effective in creating very, very peaceful and productive meetings.
Yeah,
Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, we'll take a break and we'll come back. That's okay. I can hold
All
it.
right. Hold that thought. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at bethelight.com. That's b-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at bethelight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni, talking about practical prayers, these outstanding prayers in this book.
Yeah. The stealth prayer, which is the one that doesn't use God language, and the other one that uses God language and starts off so strong that it just pings you.
It does. I'm going to tell you a short story. When I was in corporate America in the early 80s, I was a software maintenance contract salesperson. And, they would sometimes call me to close it, right? So I always got the worst customers that weren't going to close, and they were just nasty, And they weren't really nasty. To me, they would act nasty. So anyway, there was this one contract that they really wanted, and I did not want to be. They warned me, this guy is going to eat you alive and blah, blah, blah. So I was outside in the car, and I didn't have these prayers. I was thinking, I wish I had these prayers. And the only thing I could think of was, okay, Spirit, go in there and calm this thing down, because this is an excellent project and everybody is needed to pull this together. And, don't let this guy eat me alive, and see, how important you think this is. Now, that's a scrambled practical prayer. When I look back at it, because I remember the thoughts that I had, but it was based on that I believed that God was in it. I was a part of it, even though I was the last one you know what I mean? I can't say anymore, but I knew I was a part of it, and it was bringing God into the situation. And that's a concept from across the street, right? Because God isn't already in you. I was just bringing God in. And all the way back, when I first heard this prayer, I thought, ooh, that would have been great. And by the way, when I went in, I was thinking, this is going to be an adventure. And the guy looked at me and said, why are you here? And I just smiled. And he said, why are you smiling? And I'm thinking, God, you're here, right? But it took me all of 10 minutes to close that deal, man. I was a superstar after that. But it wasn't me. It was knowing that God was part of it. And the prayer captures that. And it's like, if you can just get that in your spirit, then things will go so much easier and smoother for what we want, the excellence that we want in the result.
You touched on something really important there, as that you said you didn't have this prayer and you didn't have all the steps, but you did your own prayer and you set the intention for the experience that you wanted to have and you turned it over to the infinite. The steps in the prayer don't matter. The language that you use with yourself doesn't matter. It's your belief. When you went in there with a clear intention that you and Spirit and this prospective client were all coming together in a way that was going to be harmonious and peaceful and productive, that's the prayer. As long as you don't have any doubt that that's possible, as long as you open yourself up to that infinite creative power, creating something that's outside of your specific control, that's the prayer. That does it. So whether you have the language here or you're talking about bringing God into it, the language from the other side of the street, as though God is sometimes not in it. It's the same process of turning our attention to the infinite, because it's really easy for people, regardless of what their spiritual practice is, to forget that there's a divine presence. Remembering that all the time is probably a pretty good idea, and I know I don't do it, and I wrote the book on this stuff.
Well, now, come on. Okay, listen. Let's just be fair. You know this stuff, it's in you, right? It's like, I remember how you brought the prayer that Jesus prayed and how Jesus lived. He embodied all of the steps. So that's why we may not see 5 steps as we, dissect the prayer of Jesus's. And so that's part of you. This is you. So you don't have to put the step out. You already know it. I will say this, though. I had all those steps, yeah. But I also knew that I didn't want to go back to the office and not and not having, slammed this deal. And it was some ego in it in this way. And so for those of us who are control freaks or recovering control freaks, this works for us too. God, we got to do this. We got to do this. I just don't want to fail at this, or whatever the language is. I think it's really in the prep, it's what you think about God. You can't, if you take that out, it doesn't work necessarily.
Oh yeah. And even in the stealth prayer where it doesn't mention God directly, that's all it's talking about. Mm-hmm. It's using synonyms and euphemisms to talk about God. You're telling a story. There was a friend of mine who was a minister, one of my teachers, and he also had his day job was working in sales for a chemical company. He started out as an engineer, then he moved into sales, and it was the same sort of thing where they kept on giving him the worst accounts, the ones that are driving the other salespeople crazy. And for some reason, he kept on turning them into like loyal, happy customers. Mm-hmm. And nobody could figure out what the heck he was doing. And this is what he was doing. Yeah. He was bringing his awareness of spirit into it and being present with whoever the client or the prospect was and allowing love to unfold. And as often as not, he wound up with a bigger contract than anybody had thought because there was a new possibility that nobody thought of.
I have a certificate that's on my wall now it's a quarterly conference, a quarterly meeting certificate from 1985. And it was given to me because I had really knocked it out of the park on a big contract and somebody who was just not going to have it. And I keep it because it reminds me of that day and how I approached it. It was God. I just said, listen, we got to do this. It's not going to happen without you. And I'm going in. Anybody, I would think, that had that attitude could have done it, I think. There's nothing particularly special about me in that way, except for I knew who to take with me in, you know what I mean? To help enhance anything that I had, so to speak, using language from across the street. Whatever I got, I'm a 10X it with you, God, or you going to 10X it. So let's do this. And invariably, I would walk out of a meeting or one of those things, taking a deep breath and thinking, I don't know how the heck that happened. And then on the other side, knowing exactly how it happened. So, yeah, so these prayers make it smooths the process, I think. It just makes it a little more comfortable because you kind of know what you're doing. Is that a fair statement? You know exactly what you're doing. To me, it's no room for not working. So I don't know.
Right.
You know,
If you go through these things, and there's a part there about that all the voices are heard, and nobody gets left out, and that's the refutation and reaffirmation, where it mentions a few of the things that happen in meetings that cause them to go off the rails, and saying there's no possibility that's going to happen because, and once again reaffirming the good that's unfolding and the creativity that we're celebrating and the joy that we're commingling in, and that's the meat of the prayer. And yeah, if we look a fact in the face and know something better, then better is on the way.
And right there, you brought out something that I was thinking of, and I just thought about it as you said it. Well, from the other side of the street, there's always, well, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, suppose it doesn't work. Okay, it's always whatever you call it. And so did I every single time, 100% of the time, nail the contract that first time I went in? Of course not. And did I feel like I failed? No. I just felt, and I really believe this. I mean, this is the honest to goodness truth. I always thought something is going to happen because the next time, or it's going to happen. Either by the time I get to the office, they're going to change their mind, or next week or something. But this cannot fail because of all the, the components that were in it. Yeah, did it ever not work? I can't remember when it didn't work. It didn't always work exactly on time in terms of when I wanted it to.
Or the way that you thought it was going to as you're going into the meeting. And that's about how do we step up our game? How do we learn to do this better and better? If you go in and you succeed every time, then, I can just do this and phone it in. Well, no, you actually have to keep paying attention. And when something goes sideways, it's about being present to it and using that input not to say, I'm a failure. God doesn't want me to have this good thing, but to say, there's something else that's going on here. And now I have an awareness that there's something else going on. I can find out what it is. And the next time that I engage, I can bring even more of myself and whatever that new thing is that I didn't know about before into the situation.
Yeah, and I'm always I'm talking about meetings that I went into, but based on what you were just saying, there's always something else. And I do think sometimes in situations, is the something else me? Did I miss something? And not as a self-deprecation or self-criticism. It's, okay, I might have missed something. Let me just look over this again and see what it is. If something jumps out, it's just going to be okay. And just real quick, last time when I had one of those and I got a no, and I walked back to my car, couldn't figure out what this was. And the person was two people at the table on the other side, and one wasn't able to make it the next time. And the call came, he said, send that girl back here. Now, I know in today that would not be a compliment. I understand that, but we're talking early 80s and it's about getting the job done. Okay. So I'm not feeling, don't call me y'all and say, you've referred yourself to that girl. I'm just saying how it was then. Send that girl back here.
That's right,
because she know.
And that girl went back.
I went back and thought, that's really cool, God. That's really cool. You just moved the obstacle out of the way.
Yep.
So yeah, that's.
And if we think that we know that we were a failure the first time through,
it's acknowledging, it's going back to that first step in the prayer where you talk about God, which there is one mind, one infinite love, intelligence. This is the thing that makes it or breaks it. And if I don't get in the way, but I am in alignment with it, as the prayer allows you to do, if you follow it, it brings one into alignment. Even if, and let me say this too, this is really important. If you don't get it right away, don't worry. Just follow and trust. It brings you into alignment with the perfection of God and the wonderful outcome. So even if you have doubts, and you put in the steps in between, I got to be honest, the steps used to confuse me. So I just said, okay, listen, let's just start from the beginning. Just
step through it. And if you ignore the steps and the prayers still work, then that's going to be fine as well. Let's take another break, and then we will do a God prayer using the same opening, but it's to be aware of our divine nature.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione. Yeah.
And we have been talking about the stealth. I am going to do a prayer. We've been talking about stealth prayers and God prayers.
So I just wanted to throw this in, right? Before you do the prayer, this can be confusing if you are from a traditional church content background. It could be confusing. I don't know whether it's confusing if you don't have any religious background at all. It might be easy. I'm not sure. But I would say this, and I don't get paid to say this. I don't get paid to say anything. If you are confused, just do it anyway. Right? Just get the book and read the prayers. And I promise you this. I would give you my phone number so you can call me and tell me if it doesn't work, but I ain't doing that because too many people. but I promise you that your brain and your spirit and all of that, all the pieces will come together, whether you know how to organize them or not. If you really want to do it, just get the book and read them, and it will just fall into place as you go along. It might take one prayer, might take 10, might take 1 week, it may take 3, but eventually it will come together. And I know this because it took me a while. And I was just determined because too, I was resistant a little bit because of where, I was from a different tradition. So not to belabor the point, I really think this, I believe it, right? So I just really want people to give it a shot. And
give it a shot.
Yeah. I wrote this thing called Take the Shot, right? I don't know. How much is the book? Like $10, $12 something. $15. You knock that off for lunch. Just get it, take the shot. And, it's like, it'll work.
See what happens.
Yeah. Not even that
And
big
there
a
are other
gamble.
episodes of the podcast. This is number 151. You can listen to one of the other ones, and it's got some additional input there. Let us close with a prayer, and I will say the things that I usually don't say, which is like, this is the prayer. And this is going to be the same beginning as the God prayer from earlier. And this is a prayer to be aware of our own divine nature. There is one mind, one infinite love intelligence, which I call God. This one shares itself through and as everything that it creates. Each person, every idea, and all activities are part of this one. There is nothing outside of this one, so I know that God is right here, right now. I am this infinite love intelligence taking form, and so is each person listening to this prayer. Each one a divine expression of that limitless creative power. Each one even more fully aware in every moment of the truth of our divine nature, that it is not me here and God out there, me over here asking for a favor and God out there deciding. It is one creative power and process that has created me and everything. And this next intention that I set, this next invitation that I open, this next active intention that I set and put into that creative power, that power is responding. The law is responding. I know that each one who's hearing this prayer is even more fully aware in this moment and every moment of the truth of their divine nature, that infinite creative power abides within and it is responding. It is responding to our positive and life-affirming intentions and bringing newness and goodness and joy into our lives in different ways for each of us, but the same process for all of us. It is that infinite creative power that creates everything, creating newness for and through and as each of us. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good. I'm grateful for the awareness of this creative process. I'm grateful for the deepening and enhancement of that awareness for each one listening. And I'm grateful to be able to speak this word and release it into that creative law that creates everything, and to know that it now is creating this. And so this deep feeling of thanks, I speak this word, I release it into that creative law, and I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com,
be-the-light.com,
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.